Are you new to teaching elementary music, or do you feel like you're just spinning your wheels every day in your classroom? Maybe you're overwhelmed and honestly just don't know where to go for advice and mentorship. Hi, I'm Jessica, and when I'm not drinking all the coffee, watching Razorback sports, or hanging out with my family of boys, it's my passion to help elementary music teachers just like you teach your students by using your unique personality and teaching style. In this podcast, you'll find helpful tips, strategies, and ideas that will help you kick that stress to the curb and begin teaching music with confidence. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. I'm so excited to have you back today, and we are joined today by the amazing Darlene Machacon. She had to help me pronounce her last name, and I'm pretty sure I still did not pronounce it right, and I apologize ahead of time. But anyways, Darlene is from the Darling Music Teacher on Instagram. You may or may not know about her. If not, you need to go follow her because she's amazing. We have a lot of connection points. We've always kind of connected. We haven't known each other that long, but we found out we're both pianists, and we both kind of did a double degree plan in college. She finished college with 2 degrees. I finished with Bachelor's of Music Education and almost a piano performance degree. I was 3 credits short of having that one as well. But it's really cool to kind of share our stories with each other around that. But the reason I had her on the podcast today is because she's talking about creating engaging content for elementary music students, and also kind of how she ties in teaching elementary music with her pianist background and how it helps her with engaging with her students. And we kind of also talk about how teaching elementary music and teaching piano are different, but I share my story about how when you teach private piano lessons, usually you teach with a method book, especially beginners. And when you start teaching elementary music, it's a little bit different because you're all of a sudden just like, choose something, choose a teaching method, choose a teaching style. And you're sitting there like, well, how do I know what to do? But anyways, we get into all of that in this episode. So a little bit about Darlene. She's a TK through 6th grade elementary music educator, chorus director, and private piano teacher in Orange County, California. Her experience includes designing group piano and general music curriculum, overseeing studio group music programs, accompanying for the intermediate group of the Emmy Award-winning Southern California Children's Chorus, and playing keyboard for various church worship bands in the area. After experiencing her Carnegie Hall solo piano debut in 2019, she quickly realized that performing was not her calling and decided to focus on reforming general music education for diverse students. She holds a dual Bachelor's of Music degree in music education and piano performance from Biola University and is currently pursuing a Master's in Music Education degree at Vandercook College of Music. You guys, Darlene is a gem, and I just cannot wait for you to hear our conversation. She's a delight. She's so peppy and happy. And honestly, I love following her on Instagram because she always posts the funnest TikTok dances, and it kind of gets me grooving with her over here. But yeah, she's young and brings a fresh approach, and we are just so delighted to have her in the music education world. We need her fresh perspective, and you are just, like I said, going to love hearing from her. So let's just get started. Welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. I am joined today by the amazing Darlene, and I introduced her already in the podcast intro, but I am going to let her go ahead and introduce herself a little bit more. So welcome, girl. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. First off, I do want to say that I kind of want to be you when I'm older. You're the person that I'm like, oh my goodness, Jessica is me, but who I want to be 10 years from now. So thank you so much again. This is such a huge honor to just be in your podcast and also just to chat about our stories and our experiences. So hi, my name's Darlene. I'm a music educator and piano teacher in Orange County, California. My music ed background, I started taking piano lessons when I was 7 years old and kept continuing with them until I was 14. And so what had happened when I reached high school was I was already doing these competitions. I hadn't taken a break in lessons, so I decided, I'll just, stop for the summer, relax, and then come back to it. I never went back. So what happened was I was starting to also be very involved in church. And at that time, the youth ministry, which consisted of a lot of high school kids and a few college kids, they were putting together their youth band, their youth worship team, and they were in need of more keyboardists. And here I am going, oh yeah, I'm a classically trained piano girl. This is going to be easy. And I'm thinking, what is this? Where are the notes? How do I play with drums? Because I had the horrible habit of never practicing with a metronome. And so it was definitely eye-opening for me. And there were people who were keyboardists, but didn't necessarily have the same background as me. So they were the ones teaching me how to play in that style. So I would say that most of my high school years were focused on learning how to play with that band, learning how to improvise, learning how to read chord charts, all self-taught. And then it ended up being me then teaching other young musicians how to play in that style. So during high school, then I decided, okay, now I want to be a music teacher. But here comes the twist, looking at all the ed requirements or the requirements to audition. You must have a Baroque piece ready. You must have classical piece ready. And I'm thinking, I haven't taken lessons in years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I'm thinking, this isn't fair. But you know what? I'm gonna try anyways. And so I would try to find some pieces that I thought were doable. And a little bit of a background. So I'm Filipino, second generation. My parents grew up in the Philippines, then they moved here to get married. So when I presented, oh, I want to be a music teacher. No. They weren't big fans of it. So I did have to figure out for myself if I wanted to pursue music or do something that I didn't want to do, but I knew my parents would support it, would be all up for it. I went the first route. So that was difficult, to be honest. I definitely had experiences where I would be practicing the piano and I would be told, stop, I don't want you to keep playing anymore. And for me to think, I want to be a music teacher, this was frustrating, this was discouraging. So what had happened is I went to a friend's house and recorded my audition there. And it was the worst thing ever. Like I thought, oh my goodness, I just need to submit something. But I thought, I'm just going to play something, submitted it. They accepted me to be a music minor. So I said, okay, good enough. At least I'm in. So then fast forward, I then decided to add on piano performance to my music let me backtrack again. So I got in as a music minor, re-auditioned again to get into the music education major degree. And they said, yeah, sure, finally you're in. But while I was working on that, my piano teacher at the time said, hey, why don't you do piano performance? And here I am going, why? Like, why? But then part of me thought, oh, you see this in me? Because I had grown up thinking, no, don't do music. You shouldn't. That's not the career you should be doing right now. So there was a part of me thought, maybe I could switch. So I thought, nah, I'm not going to switch. I'm just going to do both. It's not that bad. You know, it's several, and by several I mean dozens, of units extra. So that was fun. Yes, all the different requirements of trying to balance, you know, practice hours and observation hours. And I went to Biola University, where they do require their students to take, I forget how many units actually, 30 units of biblical study. So I had to do that. So I don't even know how many units I did, probably more than 200. And I thought, oh, I'm so deep. I'm so close to graduating. Should I drop one of them? I said, no, I'm going to keep going. So I finally graduated in 5 years, starting off as a music minor.
Wow.
And came out with 2 degrees.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I came out thinking, oh, I survived. Here I am.
Yeah, you're like, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Pretty much, yes. So I came in knowing that I really wanted to be a music teacher, but thinking back to when I added on the piano performance degree, I thought, well, I'm here to challenge myself as a musician too. But through that, I was also seeing a lot of the emphasis on Western music and of the classical style, which I
Mm-hmm.
did not receive a lot in my high school years too. Um, and it definitely did push me in a way that I thought I would never do.
Yeah.
But what had happened is that towards the very end, I was doing crazy technical stuff, and so backtrack. So I wasn't playing for about 4 years in high school, and then all of a sudden in college, I'm doing like stuff by list. I'm doing Beethoven
Mm-hmm.
sonatas, and I was, like I told you, double degree. Also had to do
Mm-hmm.
30 units of biblical studies. Like I was pushing myself hard. So towards the end, I was encountering some arm pain
Oh,
and
yeah.
stubborn me didn't want to go to the doctor or get it checked. I just thought, no, I'll just push through it. I have a lesson tomorrow.
Oh,
I need to
gosh.
make sure I'm prepared.
Mm.
I have observations. Like in a few hours, I got to get this in. So then there came a point for my last recital. I remember playing and then just dropping my arms and thinking, I can't even hold the flowers that people are giving me right now because my arms are hurting so much. So that was honestly one of the last times I played just like that because I thought, okay, this is my max. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's like your body
Um,
knew. Yeah.
my body knew. Yep. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like it was just not worth it for me to push myself to that extent
Yeah.
just to also perform for myself. There was something also about being a piano performance major that didn't quite sit well with me. It was this idea of, hey, look at me, I'm on this stage
Mm-hmm.
alone, look at all these nuances I'm doing, which is great. There's
Yeah.
definitely artistry in that. But for
Yeah.
me, it just didn't sit right. I would much rather be in the worship band
Yeah.
with my friends, or I would much rather be in front of my
Mm-hmm.
peers conducting them. I felt that that's where I blossomed the most.
Yeah.
So yes, very
Yeah.
happy that I pursued that degree, but there was something in me that thought, wow, I definitely found a point in my life where I thought this is the max and this is all I'm gonna do.
Hmm. Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording that like I see so many similarities between your story and mine. And I told you I was 3 credits shy of having a double degree too. And I think I've shared that on this podcast before, but I don't remember when. But it was like one more class I needed, and it would have been when I was student teaching. But I started as a piano performance major and then switched, but kept going with the piano performance degree as well. So extra recitals, extra juries, extra accompanying, extra, extra, extra. But same, it was exhausting. And I think back and I'm like, why did I keep up with both? But what's funny too, I don't know if you know this, but I went to Oral Roberts University. So I did all the Bible classes too and all the
Oh, look
extra
at
stuff.
this.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm telling you, girl, it's literally
Twinsies.
like doppelgangers. I know. No, but and one thing you said too, it was so funny because the first time I got asked to play, this is back when I lived in Oklahoma. And if this is your first time listening, I'm in Arkansas now, but they asked me to play on worship team because they knew I played piano. And it's the same thing. And this sounds so ridiculous when I say this, when people are like, what do you mean? But they put a chord chart in front of me and I went, I know what a chord is. But I go, well, I know how to play that, but like, what am I supposed to do with it? And they were like,
I know, right? You just go, see, here it
yeah,
is.
right. Like I didn't know, like, well, what am I supposed to do? But because same thing, if you're just classically trained and you get the music in front of you, you're just reading the music. You learn how to read it and what to do with it. And so the worship pastor, she would print out just for me. People on the worship team were like, what is wrong with this girl? But print out like the sheet music, and I would lay it out like all 5 pages on the keyboard stand and just read it. And then, of course, now I can look at a chord chart and I know what to do. But it's like it's kind of eye-opening as a pianist too, and probably with your students, your piano students, you're like, I know I need to like kind of cover both bases, like read music, but you need to also know how to play by ear and what improvising means and what to do if you see a chord chart, because I think that is missing. And maybe not so much, I mean, I know piano teachers are really good about it, some, but when you're classically trained, especially as a piano performance major, they don't focus on any of that. So I
Oh
know
no.
I felt like I was lacking. I'm like, why did I not know any of this? And I just got a degree in it almost. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, and when I remember there was a keyboard improvisation class that we all had to take, and here I am going, oh, this is gonna be so fun. This is gonna be the easiest, I forget, maybe 1 unit class ever,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just my jam. But I was also in a class with other piano performance majors, and some of them were thinking, how do I think beyond this? And you could see
Yeah.
some of their insecurities coming out, and that for me, I thought, huh. That's really interesting
Yeah.
that here are these amazing pianists who can perform these beautiful pieces and make these wonderful phrases and their voicing is amazing. But then when you throw them like a lead sheet, they're frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so crazy. All right. So I was really excited to talk to you because when I found out you're a pianist, but also an elementary music teacher, I know that you said you wanted to come on to kind of help talk about creating engaging content for elementary music students, but from a pianist standpoint. So, first of all, let's talk about what that means to create an engaging classroom for music, elementary music students. What do you have? What advice do you have around that?
Oh, there are so many layers to this. I almost feel
Mhm.
like I should talk in categories.
Yeah.
So I feel that the most important thing about thinking about creating engaging content is first looking at yourself. And so what that means is asking yourself these questions. Am I truly open to challenging traditional methods? Or am I only comfortable with content that I've done before, or that is in my usual zone of pedagogy? So I think if we're not reflective on our comfort levels, then it will be a challenge to adapt to new strategies and new content that has been tested to work for kids, that has been engaging. So I think, yeah, it's really important to ask yourself those questions to see what your preferences are and see how they line up with your student preferences are.
Mhm.
So another thing about reflecting is also seeing that teaching isn't one size fits all. There is no one perfect method for students. I came from an institution that was telling me, hey, this method book is the best. We think all students can do well in this. And I'm thinking, yes, but all students are different. And
Right.
so I think as teachers, we need to be aware of all the different methods and strategies out there and then test run them with kids and see what works for them and run with it.
That's good.
But I also think it's important to keep researching too what's out there, seeing what new books are out, new strategies people are talking about, anything like that to also keep you in the loop of what's there to keep students successful. So there's that. The important part is first being reflective on your own. And then the next step is getting to know the kids and taking the time to really know what their interests are. And that could include, taking surveys, giving them a space for them to talk about the music they like. If they don't have quote unquote favorite piece of music, then asking them, what TV shows do you like? What movies have you been watching recently? Kind of just give opportunities to tell them what they are, to ask them what they're interested in, and that will give you better feedback on how you would tailor your content.
Mhm.
Uh, so then I'm so then we go back to step one. If you hear things like, oh, I don't listen to anime music, or ooh, like I don't want to do this TikTok trend. Go back to step one. Okay, go back to those first questions. Am I truly open to challenging these traditional methods,
Yeah.
or am I just super comfortable? Because
Mm.
then, if your kids are interested in this over here, but then you're comfortable doing this other thing, there's this big gap.
That's good.
That's really, yeah, really important to do. So we're
Yeah.
we're music teachers. We're creative. We can come up with things to make things work. So what I do in my classroom is I try to be intentional from the beginning to ask what they're interested in. In my chorus, I did a thing called Tell Me About Yourself. I sent out a Google form. I think it's more of a Google Doc actually, and they would tell me their favorite songs, their pet peeves, and they would submit it to me, and then I would read the answers to the rest of the chorus, not and then have the kids guess who it is.
Mm.
And that has been really fun to do, to have the students engage with each other. But it's also good for me because I start seeing trends of what kids are into. So for me, I thought, oh, kids are super into American top 40. Turns out that not a lot of the students I teach are into that. A lot of them are into YouTube covers, alternative music. I've seen a lot of anime stuff. So that was eye opening for me when it came to tailoring my materials towards them. And also, I'm not saying that everyone should get a TikTok account, but it has been helpful seeing that other side of what students are exposed to, seeing what and seeing what dances they're really into, because I would come into my classroom and I see these weird moves, arms move. Everyone goes, "What is happening?"
You're like, "Are you okay?"
And they're like, "Are you guys okay?" And they'd be like secretly, like instead of Morse code, they'd be secretly, wiggling their
like doing
arms.
all these little dances. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But I'm thinking like, wait, this is what they're all about right now. How can I connect their interest to what I'm doing? So there was this one time in the fall of goodness, what year is it? 2019.
I know.
Sorry.
What day is it anymore?
I know. I woke up today. I said, it's Saturday. Nope. It's definitely Wednesday. No, it's
COVID
Thursday.
days, they blend into one. It's instead of a week, it's like one giant day. That's all it is.
Oh, exactly. I know, right? Yeah. So it's the fall 2019, and this was when the Visco girl trend was huge. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
the
my
scrunchies and the
Oh, yes. And I'm thinking, am I 7 years old again? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I remember seeing, I forget if it was on Instagram, Facebook, one of the social media platforms, and someone just took those Visco girl phrases and used that in teaching rhythms. And it just so happened in my 5th and 6th grade class that I wanted to go over triplets. And so I thought, well, here we go. Hydro flask, hydro flask, hydro flask. And oh my goodness, the kids were so into it. I remember leaving class and I would just hear hydro flask in the distance. And I'm thinking, well, like, yes, they may remember hydro flask, but I'm thinking 3 years down the road, they're probably going to see that exact same rhythm and think, oh, I remember how this sounds like because our teacher tied it to this. And I feel like that's really where the deeper learning comes in, is when you really tie it to something they already know. So with my content, I try to leave a little bit room for flexibility, just in case there are some new trends that come in and I can immediately connect that with. Not saying that I will go, oh, yes, there's this dance that I think is borderline inappropriate, but I'm going to use it anyway. Of course, no. We do use our judgment there. But if I want to continue to be relevant with these kids, I do need to leave a little bit room where I can connect with them in that way.
I love that you said that, because I feel like, first of all, we can go a lot of different ways with this. But first of all, I want to say music education changes every year. And I even feel like, what you learn about in college is not going to be the same even the year after you graduate. Because like you said, there's going to be new trends starting. And teachers, I feel like, are afraid that, well, what if I bring too much modern, like TikTok dances into my classroom? That's not the way I was taught to teach. That's not following the traditional method of teaching. And that is important. But it's also, like you said, important to connect with your students. And I love how you said you leave flexibility. I need people to hear this. Leave flexibility in your planning to add in the trends that are coming, because you never know when they're going to hit. And all of a sudden, the best lessons are the ideas that come kind of spur of the moment, when you're like, you feel like you're kind of maybe like hitting your head on a wall with a certain thing or a certain topic. It's not going over well. And all of a sudden you, like you said, you see on Instagram or someone's doing a new TikTok dance and you're like, what is this? Oh my gosh, that would be perfect to teach eighth notes or whatever it might be. And then you add it in and bam, it forms the connection points with your students. I love that you said that. So I want to ask you this. When teachers are preparing to teach music, when you said you leave flexibility in your schedule, so when you plan, how much time would you say you leave in your lessons, or how far out do you plan ahead of time? Are your lesson plans really rigid, or like you said, you leave flexibility in them? So just explain that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
So there are two people in the world. They're the people who plan all their content, all their lessons, all their units before the first day of school. Mm-hmm. And then there are people who say, I'll plan to do this if it works. That's me. I'm the second one. Because after doing the first route, it was all out the door anyways. Mm-hmm. Things would happen, holidays would happen and I would have to shift things. So I thought it's not worth the stress in the year if it's not going to work out. I'd rather leave flexibility in there. So what I do is, and I'm actually planning to change the way I lesson plan this year because #COVID.
Right. Yeah.
So what my school district is doing is we're going to first do distance learning, and then and then eventually we're going to do like a 3 option route, which is students can choose to continue to do distance learning, or they can do a hybrid model, or they can be in person, which I'm not sure how that's going to work, but maybe it will work. So I think that's also important too, is when I'm planning, it's like I have to know what situation is going to come up from the beginning. So my planning really is more overarching. I say, okay, for this grade, I want to make sure that I cover this. And then I would pull different activities, different songs, but I would not necessarily say, okay, I'm definitely going to teach it here. So I would have a Google Doc saying, these are the potential songs and materials I would choose here. And then let's say down the road, I'm on Instagram and I see, oh my goodness, this activity is amazing. I will like add that into my doc. And then as the month gets closer, then I'll start to plan what works. So I know that strategy doesn't quite work for some people because a lot of people like to have everything done at the beginning and then just plan as they go. But for me, we can't predict the future. I've had too many instances where I did plan to that advance and most of it would just be out the door anyways. Or like the kids, I would teach a lesson and then the students maybe got it right away and wait, no, I can't go on to the next one because that's scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Or I would do a lesson thinking, oh, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. So I know that's a super vague answer.
No.
Because that's just me. But I feel like as teachers, we have to be flexible and we have to work with the situation we're in. Otherwise, stress happens. We tend to get more frustrated than we should. And our energy levels focus on what we can't control.
Yeah. And like you said, with COVID, it is hard right now because going back to school, but those listening to this, and maybe you've already started the school year and you're in the fall or winter or wherever you are in your school year right now, that it's hard when, like you said, unexpected circumstances arise where you never, when you were getting your degree, thought you would be teaching virtually. I mean, maybe down the road, maybe you've thought about it, but you maybe never thought you'd be teaching on a cart or just told to send home paper packets or whatever it might be. So one thing when working with music teachers in my community is I've told them, make a contingency plan for any situation just in case, because that is the hardest part. That's my personality too. I don't like not knowing things. I like to plan my future, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. So you have to make a contingency plan for, if I am teaching on a cart, this. Here's some, like you said, make a list of songs or activities you enjoy teaching and start looking at those and saying, how can I adapt this particular song or activity if my students are not even allowed to sing? Or if I'm going to be teaching virtually, I probably can't present it the same way I would in person. So that is another way I feel like you can plan for flexibility, is looking at the things you maybe already did last year and thinking of how you can be flexible with those options as you head into this year. Have you done a little bit of that already? I know we're recording this in the summer, but have you done that a little bit as you prepare to go back to school?
So I will admit that I have not.
Girl, and you take that break.
Well, it's not quite a break for me because I forgot to mention this in my little about me. I'm in grad school right now, so awesome. I'm finishing up my first summer session next week at the time of this recording. So most of my energies have been on that, and also just making sure I really know what to teach and what to bring in. I'm also taking The Sequencing Solution by Anne Molesky. Shout out to her.
Amazing.
Her podcast is also amazing too. And so taking her course has really opened my eyes to, good intentional teaching is. Yeah. So I thought, like, you know what? I just need to focus on absorbing this knowledge. And then once I'm done with my summer session, then I can start planning. Because I've noticed earlier when I would start to plan, I would go over a module. I thought, oh wait, hold up, let me go back and fix that, or I should have added that. So I thought, what, I just need to wait until I'm done and then get down to planning. Plus, earlier, I didn't even know if we were going to go to distance learning or reopen schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought I just need to wait a little bit more. So now I know the situation I'll be in. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, but you're flexible in your thinking and just knowing that even if you're not quite sure how you're going to be teaching, you're flexible in the fact that you know that you can and you will, and you're going to figure it out. And I think every teacher needs to hear that you don't have to know how to do it all. right when you go back, but you're going to figure it out, just like when you're a first year teacher and you figure it out. Right, so I want to switch over and talk about you being a pianist. And I know that that brings a unique perspective to teaching elementary music. So I kind of want you to just offer advice around what you feel like when it comes to planning or teaching elementary music. What advice do you have for teachers from a pianist point of view?
This is a really interesting question for me because I wouldn't say that being a pianist has necessarily helped me plan in the classroom. I mean, it's definitely convenient to be my own accompanist, for sure. And I found myself doing that a lot. I found that being an elementary music teacher has helped me become a better piano teacher. So I'm just gonna almost like flip the question for you.
No, that's good.
Because, yeah, the more I think about it, I mean, yeah, I see my pianistic skill being very useful when accompanying for myself and for other music teachers, and when I would work with my chorus, and especially in the classroom. I'm thinking when I would teach piano, I would see how my training and the way I would scaffold my lessons in the elementary classroom definitely affected how I taught my piano lessons. And it's really interesting how the approaches to pedagogy for piano can be somewhat different for the pedagogies for the elementary general music classroom. And of course, they're different, you know, private teaching scenarios versus group teaching, but there are still so many similarities. And I feel like there's almost a bit of a gap where in the group teaching atmosphere, you're trying to, you know, teach with all these differences. You're trying to differentiate. You have all these things you want to try to cover. You're trying to cover kinesthetic, visual, oral. But then sometimes in the piano pedagogy world, like it's all about, hey, this is the method book we use. Okay, cool. Make sure you teach this. Make sure you have good technique, which is great. But I've noticed that there's not a lot of emphasis on improvisation, which we mentioned earlier. There's not a lot of emphasis sometimes in movement, having the kids move a lot, especially when they're younger. And I've noticed that, yeah, I take a lot of the activities I've done and some of the strategies I would use in teaching. Like, for example, with my younger kids at the piano, I don't go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I do not do counting at all. I've done the Kodai rhythm syllables and a lot when they're younger, and then when I notice that they're very comfortable with it, then I start adding in numbers. But I've noticed that when it comes to getting the rhythm, saying ta and tt just sticks with them faster. So for me, I was just really taking all these different strategies and see how it worked in my piano lessons. And yeah, I felt like, oh my goodness, this has made me a more well-rounded piano teacher. Yeah, it helped me become more cognizant of how to break down knowledge for kids. Yeah, so that's I don't know, I like how I didn't quite answer your question and just flipped it for you.
No, you did. No, I love that because you're so right. There's a lot in piano lessons that are not taught. And I know there's a lot of elementary music teachers listening to this who also teach private lessons. And so getting advice about both, I think, is needed. But one thing, like you said, from your experience and my experience, we know that teaching kids in a variety of different ways and using your own unique teaching style is so important. And that in piano lessons, kids can do a lot more than just sitting at the piano and reading the music. Get them moving, have them count in different ways, like you said. And one thing I've thought about for me, what was a struggle when I first started teaching elementary music was learning piano, but also teaching beginning piano students was the method books, and they go in sequential order, you know, like kind of like Kodai, but they go in sequential order where like, okay, they already kind of lay it out for you step by step, and you don't have to use the method books, but if you do, that's how it is. And then when you're in elementary music, unless you're using one of the really old like curriculums like Spotlight on Music, a lot of times it's just like, all right, teach music to kids, and you're like, when, how, which month do I do what, how, what 9 weeks do I, it just becomes like, what, give me an outline. Like, you know, it's just, that's for me, like for me personally was the biggest contrast of there's method books here. And over here, it's just like, pick a method and go for it. And you're like, what do I do? How do I know what to teach from? Did you find that was a struggle for you a little bit too?
in the elementary music world?
Mm-hmm.
Well, with my student teaching, we did have curriculum, but it was from, I don't even know. I don't even remember the name of the book. It's from the 80s or something like that. And so what my master teacher had done was, I'm just creating my own curriculum. So what I did was kind of follow along what she did. And she's amazing teacher. But then I realized that, like, wait, I'm not her. So I thought, wait, I'm going to have to start creating things on my own. And I did find that element of, oh my goodness, when do I plan what? And Teachers Pay Teachers is great resources. But sometimes you're like, wait, when should I plan this? Should I plan this in January? But I'm like, I have to make sure they know this and this and this. So that's really important when you're planning lessons, especially on your own when you have no curriculum, is really understanding the scaffolding part of teaching. So I felt like, even though it is definitely helpful to have curriculum all laid out for you and just go, oh, sure, I'll just, make sure I cover this and this. But when you have to build from scratch, it gives you a different edge. You really,
completely.
truly have to think about how you teach, what you teach, why you teach that concept.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's good advice. But I did teaching private piano lessons. I would follow the method books, but also do my own thing too. And I think that's important for teachers to hear. No matter what curriculum you follow, what resources you buy, whatever you learn online or TPT products or whatever, still make it your own. You can get something and let's say you like half of it and the rest of it, you're like, I can't use that or I don't like that part of it. Then add your own spin to it. And that's what makes you a good teacher, is by finding the resources, like you said, planning, leaving flexibility in your planning, and then adding in and taking away things as needed, because your students last year won't necessarily be your students this year and you're not going to want to do the same thing all the time because you're going to get burnt out. So it's important to keep that in mind. And I love that you said that. I have loved this conversation. And before we go, do you have any last minute advice for elementary music teachers listening about anything we talked about or didn't talk about today?
Well, one thing that has been big in my heart is knowing your platform. This can definitely tie to social media or even just how you carry yourself when you represent yourself as a music teacher. I think what's really important for teachers to understand is their platform. So whether that's on social media or how you go around representing yourself as a music teacher. And I posted about this on my Instagram recently, how what is the power of your platform, especially in this pandemic. And so our students right now are going through something that we would not have imagined. And of course, it's definitely in light of Black Lives Matter happening. There's just a lot that they're going through. So I think we definitely need to consider beyond just how am I going to teach this concept, right? Or, how am I going to teach this instrument? Or, I'm going to sing. Yes, those things are important. But for our students right now, that quite is it.
Yeah.
I think we definitely need to take the time to consider how to address trauma. Definitely consider what kids are going through right now, social and emotional learning, but also through a cultural responsive lens, taking the time to, even if you haven't taken the time to look into culturally relevant pedagogy, then read some books, listen to podcasts, start seeing how you can put that into your teaching. And just challenging the traditional ways that you have been taught to, because even though I definitely loved how I learned elementary music through student teaching, and here's the plot twist, I actually did not want to teach elementary music when I was student teaching. I didn't decide that until the very end. This entire time I had thought I wanted to be a high school music teacher, so decided at the very end. But yeah, just thinking about your traditional ways of teaching music is like, how do I challenge that, and how do I continue to really engage kids and just keep, like what we talked about, just keep up with what kids are into, but also the current climate of what the world is in, because that really does affect our lessons. And when students see that you are aware of that, then they will connect with you more. They will be engaged in your lessons, and you will have that relationship with your students. And then when they graduate, when they get older, they won't necessarily think, oh, I'm so glad I learned about a quarter note back then. They're not going to think they're like, oh, I'm so glad I remembered to put my left hand on top of the recorder. They're going to think, oh, I'm so glad we talked about that situation, or I'm so glad she got to hear me out. I'm so glad we got to joke about Hydro Flask. They'll think about those little things more than the concepts you teach.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And of course, you went into teaching music because you want to teach music, obviously. The connection part of knowing your students is what's important. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the process. So it's so true and so good. I love how you said that. So let everybody know where they can find you and connect with you online.
So I am mainly on Instagram and also on TikTok. My handle is @thedarling music teacher. That's TheDarling music teacher. And I'm also starting a podcast with my colleague Nora, and it's going to be called Coloring the Melody. It's going to be a baby podcast, but we're going to talk about our perspectives as music educators of color. So will be super fun to talk about.
Oh, well, yay. I am so excited to support you. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I have loved this conversation, and I cannot wait for everybody to listen in. And you guys make sure to connect with Darlene, and her links will be in the show notes. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much for listening in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, I would love for you to review the show and leave a rating on iTunes. To find out more about how I can help you gain momentum in your elementary music teaching career, head to thedomesticmusician.com, where you'll find free downloads, courses, the blog, and so much more. Continue teaching music and never doubt the impact you're making each and every day in the lives of your students.